the show begin. Next generation for the win. We're going all in. All together now, let's begin. Let the show begin.
So when Aloke and I first met, I think this was maybe 2009, ixigo had been around for a couple of years. You had raised a small seed round to maybe keep the lights on. You had just crossed, I think, 1 million bookings was the threshold back then. You and your co-founder Rajneesh, just thinking back to those days and kind of trying to put yourself back in those shoes, did you ever imagine, come 2024, you're going public, you're oversubscribed? Was that ever part of the vision in those early days?
Well, I think we did think that at some point we would get to be a large company, right? We didn't know whether we'd go public or not, but given the market is what it is, we just felt that if we gave it enough time and attention in terms of understanding consumer behavior and building the right things, we just felt that we had the right to build a large company. It just took a lot longer than what we imagined it would, 17 years, to get to this point. But yeah, I mean, I think if you asked me back then, and because back then we were a meta search, and today we look nothing like the company we started. In fact, we look nothing like the company we were 5 years ago.
So Fritz asked Chris Hemmeter this question, and I think it certainly applies to the investment community, but I think it also applies to a startup. Maybe the weighting is a little bit different, but would you consider yourself a gambler, a builder, or a self-promoter?
Definitely a builder.
And would you say this the same for Rajneesh?
Absolutely, more so for Rajneesh.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the culture that you built within ixigo, was really bring in a group of really passionate builders, solve consumer problems. One of the things that I find so interesting about your strategy is you never were concerned about competition. At least you never spoke publicly about competition. You were always about solving problems in the market. So can you speak a little bit about that mentality?
Yeah, so I think when you're building for consumer, right, the biggest mistake you can make is getting too obsessed with what competition is doing. I think the best use of your time is actually in understanding consumer behavior. And a few years into starting the company, we realized that every OTA in India was just copying the Western template of building for flights and then selling hotels, right? And then we looked at the stat, like 3% of Indians were booking flights. Guess where the number is today? It's 4%, right? So 96% of Indians don't find flights as it's either irrelevant for them to travel using flights, right?
So did you know this early on? Did you know this, or was that something that you discovered early days and said, "Look, we've got to diversify"?
I think early days, people were just assuming this market would play out just like it did the rest of the world. OTAs, meta, we were the meta. And, very quickly we realized that this will happen in a very different way because most Indians are still not, booking flights and hotels. And for every Indian, travel means getting on a train. So just some stats for all of you, right? 8 billion trips a year happen on Indian railways. About 800 million plus happen on reserved tickets, and the rest are unreserved. Try your luck in getting a seat. But essentially, that's the bloodline for India. And if we were not worried about trains, we thought you can never win this market without winning on trains. So back in 2012, we started building a utility app for train travel. And I think what makes us unique, just coming to your question, was I think whenever we solved any problem, we never cared about monetization or even transactions on day one. We said, what are those consumer pain points that are worth solving, right? And we would spend disproportionate amount of time and energy to solve those pain points, whether it meant how to track a train better or whether your waitlisted PNR would confirm or not, giving them the probability of that with machine learning. And then for many years, we didn't monetize anything, right? Like almost 3 or 4 years, there was zero monetization.
So how if you're not seeing the results from monetization, how are you? So this came up in at Innovation Day yesterday, we talked about measurement as a real big factor in understanding, some of these younger entrepreneurs, if they're really starting to get to that product market fit. So did you have measurement strategies in place? If you're not monetizing it, what's showing you that you're making some incremental progress?
I think if you build something that people want, which they've been dying to get hold of, you will start seeing organic traction, right? And I remember that when we first built the Train app, in the first year, and this is very early days of Android, first year we got 1 million downloads. The next year we got 10 million downloads, right? Right now, like last quarter, we did 28 million downloads, right? So, I think these things start compounding once you find the product market fit. And the key is to talk to enough people out there and understand. So I used to travel a lot on trains myself, not just when I was a kid, but even while building the app. And we would just identify what pain areas nobody was solving, because there was the government website selling train tickets, but all the other pain areas were unsolved. And we just said, let's build the best app for train travel, right? And that just gave us the next leg of growth. And at some point we said, okay, it makes sense now that we have so many users, it makes sense to start monetizing by selling tickets. So everything that we did, even Meta, was not about transactions from day one. It was about helping people find where the cheapest fares are. And then over time, we pivoted to OTA because we cared deeply about customer experience. And we felt that the only way to serve customers well was to handhold them right from the utility part to the transaction part and the post-booking part.
It's really interesting because the typical, maybe Western model of building an OTA is start with flights and then very quickly get into hotels, because that's where you're making money. But I think you very accurately identified a need in a very localized market, and that was your decision to get into rail.
Yeah, I think the long-term thinking around this, it's very first principle, but if you think about it, every new flyer being added in India today, about 60% of the new flyers being added actually are people who were already traveling on train or bus, right? So if you want to win flights in India, you need to start by winning trains, and then as the market matures, you upsell into that. The next 100 million flyers are already traveling. They're just not taking a flight yet. So if you look at our flight growth in the last few quarters, we're the fastest growing flight OTA in India in a crowded market where from the outside it looks like these guys shouldn't have any right to win. But our right to win is because that guy's been using my app for the last 5 years for other stuff. And now he's booking flights on our app, right? So that's a very different approach to the Western model, yes.
So this is maybe the most fascinating part of your story, and it wasn't so long ago, where the industry was confronted by obviously a really challenging time, travel shut down. What were some of the strategies that you put into place early days of the pandemic? The growth that you're experiencing coming out of this time is really phenomenal. So I want you to map us back to 2020, 2021, some of the decisions that you made with the business to really leverage this period of rapid rebound.
Sure. So I'll roll back a little bit more. So 2018, 2019-ish, we were trying to raise another round. And it was very tough because everyone would say, oh, the incumbent is so large, but they still lose money. How are you going to build a viable business here? And we said, okay, if it's taking that long to raise money, might as well think about profits. So we turned the gear on that in 2019. Early 2020, just before the pandemic, we were already profitable. And the pandemic struck, and we actually did a few things which in hindsight were counterintuitive, maybe suicidal. But we started hiring people at the time people were firing people, right? We didn't fire anyone in our team. We actually hired more people in customer support because there was no one to pick up calls at most of the airlines and OTAs. We were like, okay, maybe the differentiation we can create right now is every call gets picked up. I was on customer support for almost 3 weeks during the lockdown. And the other thing we did was we invented this product called ixigo Assured, which gives you a full refund, irrespective of whether the airline gives it to you or not, or the train website gives it to you or not. We were underwriting the risk ourselves. And this was a super hit product during the pandemic and continues to be even today because it solves for a major problem that people face with OTAs, which is hollering for refunds. And the third thing we did was we actually refunded customers before the money came back from suppliers. In fact, there's an interesting story because payment gateways run out of money if the refunds exceed the collections. One weekend, we actually crowdsourced money from all our employees to pay back our customers. Because we said, if customer obsession is a core value, right, it's not something you put on a poster on a wall. This is a time to actually prove that you're that obsessed about customers. We actually gave them, and we said, look, if everything goes under, we go under, it's fine, right? But if things come back, these guys will remember, and they did remember. Last year, we did 6 times of pre-COVID scale, thanks to a lot of those users who actually came back.
And your target market is, can you kind of explain, are you going after higher end travel? Is it more kind of mid-market? Like what's your core target?
So the way we think about India is that it's still early, right? I know people said that 10 years ago at this conference, but it's still early. And if you want to win India, you want to win the next billion users, right? And the next billion users have just come online thanks to UPI. They've started transacting online. And the way we're trying to win them is to say, we're not here to just sell tickets to you. We're here to take care of every pain area that you face. And as a result of that strategy, our tier 2, 3 penetration, smaller town penetration in India is massive. So 94% of our bookings have a tier 2, 3, or 4 leg. 2,400 towns we get transactions from. And we're quite big on train and bus and flights. In fact, the interesting thing in India is tier 2, 3 is what is driving flight growth as well, including for international right now. So we are kind of benefiting off that. And now we're getting into hotels, so we'll see how that goes.
So back in 2017, you pitched I think you called it Tara back then.
Tara, yeah.
Yeah, Tara, and it was an AI-powered travel agent of the future. It's like we could see this on stage today, right? So you were early days with AI. Can you talk about your experience of using the technology back then and how you're benefiting from it as we kind of look into the future?
So it's a very interesting time, 2017 at the Phocuswright conference where we demoed Tara. Actually, we were pivoting in our minds from Meta to OTA at that time with a 100-member team, and we didn't want to become too operationally complex with huge call centers. So we said, why not do all the customer support, through AI? And it was very early days, so we started working in 2018 on something called the transformer models, right, which were clunky back then, but today they're called LLMs, right? But essentially launched AI chatbot in 2018. Last year, almost 87% of our customer support was end-to-end automated with AI. As we speak, last 2 quarters, we've started doing this on voice. June quarter, hundreds of hours of calls every day are being handled by voice agents already. And it's getting better, right? So it handles both Hindi and English. Soon we'll expand for more languages. But I think making those early investments was more driven by what's the best way to serve our customers than by anything else, right? I mean, the AI wave came much later, but I think we've been spending time on these things for about a decade.
So let's get to the next billion traveler opportunity. So India is 5th largest economy. That happened in 2022. The IMF projects India to climb to the 3rd position by 2027. And the government is clearly investing in infrastructure. So can you kind of put this market into perspective?
I think it's singularly the most exciting market for travel in the world right now. What we are suffering from is immense capacity constraints. We don't have enough planes coming in at the velocity that we need them. We are at close to 90% load factors on the airlines. The airlines, all airlines in India are profitable, big or small. All OTAs in India are profitable right now, big or small, except maybe 1 or 2. But I think the point of inflection will arrive when the GDP per capita of our country crosses $4,000. That's where the magic started to happen in China, Southeast Asia, and other places. We're at the close to $3,000 mark right now. But guess what? It's going to take less than 5 years now to, in fact, probably 3 to 4 years to get to that $4,000 GDP per capita mark. And when that happens, then it's not just the Bombay and the Gurgaons of the world which are, driving discretionary growth. Then you're seeing the next 500 cities driving discretionary income growth, and that's going to be, massively explosive for everyone who's already built out something big here. So I think we are at that moment of time where China was probably 14, 15 years ago, right? And that's the feeling. I mean, the entrepreneurship ecosystem is very strong. There's massive tech IPO boom going on right now.
Right, and so digital is a big piece of it, right? So
digital is a massive piece of it.
Broadband, payments. Jerry, can you cue up the next slide on payments, which is
I mean, payments is a real success story that probably people don't understand. India is singularly the biggest payments market in the world right now by volume. We're doing 15 billion transactions on UPI in a month. This is bigger than China, guys. $238 billion being processed. And this is a free payment method, right? So there's something called NPCI set up by the government. It's an account-to-account transfer through QR code. It's free, it works, and it's enabling massive growth for all e-commerce players. 42% YOY growth at this scale is continuing. This is last month's data. And if you look at the OTA market, right, so the GDP is growing at about, 6-7%, but the OTA market is growing at about 18%. I mean, in fact, the overall travel market will grow 9 to 10%. OTAs will grow almost double of that. And almost every category out there is going to double it within 5 years, right? So it's just like, that's how fast the market grows, and then you can grow faster than that if you're sort of playing on the right part of the market. But it's definitely the most exciting time to be alive in India.
So how does that translate? So this audience, we have folks from across the region, really across the globe. So how does it translate from a domestic opportunity to an international opportunity?
Yeah, so I mean, I keep speaking to a lot of tourism boards and high commissions, embassies, and I think most countries in the world recognize that within the next 5 years, Indians will be part of their top 3 inbound markets into their countries. And it's not just about the flight and hotel growth as a result of it, but people are saying, Indians are actually coming and shopping and spending, billions of dollars on our economy. So we are seeing visa-free regimes coming. I mean, 60-plus countries now have either visa on arrival or visa-free regimes for Indians. I mean, I wish Shenzhen is the only one where I still need to give like 100 pages to get a visa, and it takes like 3 weeks. But most of Southeast Asia, I can literally travel at a day's notice and get a visa either on arrival or don't need a visa also. Sri Lanka, Thailand don't need a visa, right? And I think this is just a start. Indonesia, I get a visa in 2 hours, right? So I think some of those things are definitely helping. The fact that airfares domestically are high because of capacity constraint. So international airfares at times are similar. So people may think of going to Singapore or Dubai instead of going to Goa because the price is going to be the same, right? And I think those things are driving outbound growth. Last year, Indians spent $17 billion on travel outside India. And the other big trend we are seeing is the connectivity improvement from tier 2, 3 cities, right? So a lot of the Middle Eastern carriers are now flying to multiple tier 2 and tier 3 even cities in India. And I think that trend is going to accelerate from here on as the airport infra improves. There are 100 new airports coming up in the next 5 years. And I think most of those are tier 3. So yeah, and the last thing before everybody, spiritual tourism is a massive driver, a massive underserved market in India. It's a massive driver of growth. Ayodhya, where a new Ram temple was inaugurated, is getting 150,000 plus pilgrims every day. I mean, now they're saying it's even accelerated further. Varanasi last year, where the infrastructure was improved, was getting 100,000 pilgrims a day. And that's the kind of scale at which these things are growing right now.
So I want to finish off. We've got about 30 seconds left or so. I want to play a game of this or that. So I'll give you 2 options. You choose the one that best suits. Flights or rail?
Rail.
Public or private?
Public.
Domestic or international?
Both.
Technology or humans?
That's a tough one. Technology and humans, but technology over humans.
Technology empowered humans? Make my trip or ease my trip?
Ixigo.
the here and now or the next generation?
Next generation.
Ladies and gentlemen, Aloke Bajpai from ixigo.
Thank you.
And right, they're ready now. Let the show begin. Next generation for the win.